Ready to go. The videographer this evening will be,
Mimi Odgers, I'm filming for North Street Neighborhood Association.
thank you. I understand there's at least one person who'd like to make a public comment before we get going. Would that be you?
Yeah. I guess it was more of a question.
Okay.
So the Solid Waste Task Force had made their final recommendations. The one I was particularly interested in was the city facilitating reuse. And I guess it was going to be the city council and mayor who were going to appoint a committee to do that.
I think that was the thought of the task force.
No. There was a specific recommendation in there about
Yes.
the reuse,
Right.
about creating a reuse committee.
Yes.
And I was wondering, so do you guys have to vote on that recommendation before it happens, or who's the?
So we accepted the recommendations as presented. I have to admit we have first been working on switching from stickers to bags. But Karen is working on a whole list of the recommendations and how we can begin implementing them.
Okay.
So it's only, it's been about a month, 4 or 5 weeks.
Right. I guess my main question was, okay, so you have voted on it, then it's up to the city council to initiate furthering the putting together the committee.
I think probably we'll be talking to the mayor and finding out how to get it going. But it certainly seems to me like a good idea, and especially while the landfill is open, we have a fairly good cash flow. I mean, this seems like a good time to try some ideas. Jim?
Now, the only thing that has kept us from doing this in the past is the location of where you would do this. You'll remember that back here quite a while ago, we had talked about doing it at the DPW and actually walked around the DPW property looking for a spot to do this. There's no good spot on this property. This property moves right to the hill. So where do you do it? Do you do it at the old site up at the landfill? That could get a little dicey. We were hoping that the State Barns part would be developed and that it would be built there as a permanent location to try this out. But that hasn't gone as swift as we thought it might. And so we're at the point where you're asking now, where do we do it?
I think a committee could be looking at other models, one-day events, or working with Goodwill or Salvation Army. Well, there's other things that could be done other than having a permanent facility. I'm sure they would be looking into those things.
Right, and I do understand that there have been reuse efforts in the past. My question is actually a really simple one, which is, what is the next initiating step in putting together the committee if it's been voted on by the BPW? Like, whose ball is it? Because
Probably ours. But it's, give it another few weeks, and I think that will have happened by then also. At least initiating the committee and trying to get something going.
So will it be like a agenda item on the next?
I think what Terry's trying to say is there's a lot of things that, that there's a lot of things in the recommendations, and we're a volunteer group, and so we're just sort of trying to get our heads around everything. The very first thing that we're under a time constraint was to do the pay-as-you-throw bags. And so that's highest up on the agenda because of the end of the fiscal year, and so we wanted to work on that first. And we only have one person on the staff that can help us out, and we're all a volunteer group. Does that answer your question?
So
Okay.
I would say within a month, something will start to happen.
Terry?
Yes.
Can I also add that the Solid Waste Education Committee is meeting next Wednesday,
And our game plan with that committee was to take a look at the recommendations and to identify those things that might be appropriately picked up by that subcommittee that already exists.
Right.
And then I was gonna ask that we get ourselves up to the agenda for the next time to
Okay.
get the Board of Public Works blessing on
All right.
moving forward on those initiatives. So,
Okay.
and that's, you know, we're always looking for people to be more involved with that, so if you'd like to join us next Wednesday morning at 8:30 right here. Is this room open?
We'll make it open.
That's the game
We'll
plan.
make it.
Don't forget Mr. Hagelstein, he was in here at every meeting for a long time advocating for that type of
Yeah,
thing.
well, and that committee, I want to be very clear, is really focused on the education piece. So I think it would be a good committee to sort of invest in spending the time and energy, having them focus on the education that's gonna need to happen with new bags, the fact that we accept the
Actually, yeah.
clamshells right now, it's a new change that we've had at the transfer stations. And everything.
Okay, thanks. First, for approval of minutes of the April 27th meeting.
Second?
Any comments or discussion about those? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we have a group of people from Bottoms Road. Alex, you'd like to talk about campaigning and leafleting at the transfer station?
Yes.
And,
Are you the Goddards?
Yes.
Okay, so that's regarding tourism signs.
okay,
Nice to meet you.
and Karen, you're here for,
The needs-based discount and
Number 11, under new business.
Okay,
And
so,
Nicole Sanford, staff is here on old business 1 and 2, and contract on new business number 5.
got it. All right, so my game plan is to, on those questions where we have staff waiting, I'm gonna try to clear them out so they can go home. Then we'll work on Bottoms Road and campaign. Can I have a motion to take,
Number 11.
okay, number 11, out of order.
So moved.
All in favor?
so, I distributed this at the last meeting, I hope you had a chance to look at it. Basically, we were looking for something that was already existing in the city, so that the DPW wouldn't have to do the vetting to see who was eligible. So the assessor's office has a procedure, and it's under Mass General laws, blah, 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 where they can pre-qualify people for the discount. And basically what we were proposing is that if they qualify, they would get a free vehicle permit, free access to the food waste drop-off program, and half-price bags. So they could come in and purchase the bags at the DPW for half the price.
Do we have an idea of how many qualify for
There's,
this?
there's about 2 dozen right now. It's a fairly rigorous, well, it's a property tax exemption, so it's, they have to qualify on income in other circumstances.
Sure.
But it's the only thing I could find in the town that was already established for a needs-based system.
Well, I just had a comment on the second paragraph about residents' eligibility can be easily verifiable through the assessor's office, and I was wondering if they couldn't just, on an annual basis, give that to the staff at DPW and have it be here and accessible, so you wouldn't have to then call them up.
Although people are being added and dropped from the list all the time, so we can always get an updated list. And this wouldn't affect there's already a senior discount in effect, because they pay $5 for their vehicle permits and residents pay $25. So we're not talking about changing that at this time.
Okay.
And by the way, we're considering this because this was a recommendation from the solid waste task force to develop a needs-based discount.
Is that the same one that they used to, I know there's an exemption for the CPA funding, is that the same one?
It would seem to me that we also have renters who are not on your list that would qualify for that, they bring their own trash. So that would open up a whole new avenue there. What are we talking about?
Actually, no one's ever asked for a discount that I'm aware of, so we're not sure what the need is out there.
Well,
I
that's
think
what I'm afraid of.
if there, if we, I actually did some research around the state if others are doing something, and it seems a little bit too broad-based in a way. Like if you're living in a housing assistant home or housing authority property, they would qualify, but then you really do need to have a budget behind it.
Because the housing authority takes care of their own trash.
Right. But I'm just saying, there are other systems that towns use, but then they have a budget to support that of $10,000-$15,000.
I would like to see a lot more research go into it before it comes to a vote before this meeting.
I totally understand your point, and I thought about that too. I think the point of the committee though was what would be the least amount of effort on the part of the DPW, and so that there wouldn't be a lot of time spent on it, because while we thought that that was important, that there were other things on here that maybe would be better in terms of the effort of reuse and to put staff time into that. So I think it was just a balancing of the lever in terms of what the staff would be working on.
I can certainly agree with that, but
Yeah.
if we enact something that's too encompassing, we aren't going to be able to pay for the program.
Right.
Yeah, that is a real problem. Like the city of Malden has a $25,000 budget for their discount program. And, the more it's advertised, the more people,
Well, whatever you enact here in the city of Northampton will be well advertised,
yes.
and everyone will know about it.
Mhm.
So you can be assured that advantage will be taken of the program. And I don't mean that in a negative way.
no, but
I mean,
but
people will use it. But
And we're bringing this up now because the bag program is going into effect July 1, so it would be great to have, something in place at the same time. And we're not going up on prices,
no,
but again, it's just we're trying to respond to the task force recommendations.
So if it's just a program that exists right now, it's just a few dozen people, would a renter qualify for that program that the assessor's office is operating?
Actually, they could qualify under the same criteria. They're not going for a property tax break, but if they met the criteria, yes.
you're absolutely right. And that's what I'm saying. Those are the people you don't know about.
But most of the renters already have their trash from recycling provided for at their complex.
If it's a complex of, say, 6 or more, but a smaller complex, 2 or 3,
It's
I don't know, do they?
It's legally, it's 4 or more have to have.
Okay, all right. There's something in there that governs it.
We could actually put this in place, and if it turns out that there's another population, like renters or that aren't covered by it, we could come back and figure out. But what I found in other towns was that if they had any other type of program, then you have to set up a budget so that you're paying for their trash.
Well, my only concern is we've just adjusted the bag fee. It's $2. It used to be $1.
Well, that was a year ago.
A year ago. If we put something in place that's going to give a discount to a quarter of the city's people, it means the bag fee's going to go up to $3.
Actually, a quarter, I hope that many people don't qualify for property tax.
That's what I'm asking,
exemption.
yes.
So you feel like you'd like a little more information?
I think so. I don't know. If the rest of the board isn't as concerned as I am, then go ahead and vote it in. But I would think that you'd want to be very cautious about the way you go through this.
Mimi had a question or a comment?
Well, a comment was that when we were discussing this at the task force, I think the concern was more when the actual landfill closes and we were going to see more of a dramatic rise in the prices. And I'm not sure if, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that concern about having some sort of way for needs-based was more for when, because we're not really talking the prices going up. We still have the $5 senior ticket for the permitting. So it was my understanding that it was more for when the landfill closes and we were going to see much more of an increase for people, that we would put something in place.
That's true.
So,
I think that's right.
yeah.
So we do have time, Jim, if, we don't have to,
That was my recollection as well, and, we're not raising other fees, the bag fee is staying the same, although we're changing from stickers to bags, so it's not a huge drive to vote on it this very minute, so.
Right.
The board wants us to do more research or think about it a little bit longer, certainly have time to do that.
Yeah. Also, the bag order has been placed, but I'd like you to approve the design. This is pretty much exactly what it would look like.
That's great.
And so, obviously, there's 3 sizes of bags, and it has a different weight limit on each one, but,
they didn't go for the 3?
no. And they're going to be royal blue with a yellow drawstring.
Lungo.
Royal blue.
Yeah, I like that.
And we do have, we're getting agreements with, we have 10 retailers at this point, and I'm still working on 4 more, so.
Great.
We're on track.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think next would be number 5. We have a motion to take,
So moved.
So we had, I guess I'll just introduce this briefly. We had 3 items related to the city's watershed on the agenda, and the first one is item number 5, which is the contract for the forest stewardship plan, which we were going to have Nicole Sanford talk a little bit about tonight. And in conjunction with her work on the forest stewardship plan contract, she's also been the person instrumental in drafting these public access policies in the watershed and the snowmobile policy we talked about at the last meeting. So if we want to just start, you want to talk about the forest stewardship plan for a minute, and then we can maybe move to the other 2.
Sure. Yeah, we submitted, we sent out an RFP, or a notice for an RFP for the development of 3 forest stewardship plans. This map was included in the RFP, and it kind of outlines the areas that the forest stewardship management plans would focus on. The first would be the Ryan Forest Unit, and that's the forest management plan would focus on city-owned property that's close to the Ryan Reservoir. West Whately Forest Unit obviously would be on city-owned property adjacent to the West Whately Reservoir, and then similarly for Mountain Street. We submitted the notices on March 10th. Proposals were due in on April 15th. There were 13 forestry consultants who were interested in receiving the RFP, and 3 consultants actually submitted proposals. Ned, Jim, Dave Sparks, and myself reviewed all 3 proposals. And we all agreed that Mike Morey's proposal seemed to be the best. He seems to be very conscientious. The proposal was very detailed, and it seemed to be the best one that followed the scope that was outlined in the RFP. Other proposals were from Bay State Forestry Consultants and Pantramal Environmental Services out of Ashfield. So we're hoping to start the work in April of 2012. We're hoping to start the work as soon as possible and complete the work in April of 2012. And that's a really important date in that it coincides with DCR's funding for forest stewardship plans. In order to get some reimbursement for the development of these plans, the plans need to be completed by April 30th of 2012. What's great about development of forest stewardship plans too is that the management, or the objectives that come out of these plans, there's also funding available to implement those management objectives or goals, whatever they happen to be. So
So the DEP has some requirements for the way that we manage the watershed properties that we own within the watershed. The Forest Stewardship Plan, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what the scope of work is that Mike Murray, the licensed forester, is going to do for us, and then how we're going to take that stewardship plan.
Sure. The agency, though, I think you said DEP, it's actually DCR who oversees the forest stewardship plans. And essentially, it's kind of a holistic approach to each of these forest units. So they'll look at all of the acreage that the city owns adjacent to, these 3 reservoirs, and kind of take an inventory of what's out there, the existing forest stands that are out there, describe the forest stands, and then come up with managements or prescriptions for those stands. That'll be part of the plan. But that's all done in keeping with coordination with the DPW in terms of what are our overall management objectives. And that's different depending upon depending upon who's doing the forest management plan. So since this is associated with drinking water, water quality is going to be a major management objective of these plans. Whereas recreation is not going to really be an objective at all because, we have no trespassing on watershed lands. So, wildlife habitat, water quality would be one of the most important goals, and wildlife habitat probably a lesser goal. It wouldn't come before water quality. Timber harvesting, we'd be interested in harvesting timber, only just because that actually funds future land acquisitions. So.
And it's also important for the health of the forest units and
Sure.
and meeting other objectives for the forestry units.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing with forestry is that what's really important with forests is to have a mixed age forest, a healthy mixed age forest. And there are some trees out there that I've noticed that have, beech bark disease. There's a lot of pine plantations that were planted when the reservoirs were constructed. And those single stands can be somewhat dangerous if there's, some natural disaster that comes in and wipes out, the pine plantations that are very close to the reservoirs.
So this will encompass what Carl Davies used to do? Marking the trees for harvesting?
Yes, that'll
It goes
be.
beyond just making a plan for it.
Well-
Actually, Mr. Maury would also be the person who would,
That would be the next step. The first step would be to do the forest management plan. The forest management plan won't necessarily result in cutting plans, but what it will result in is identification of certain stands that may be suitable to develop the forest cutting plan. That would be down the road.
So this would give us the roadmap for future management activities in the watershed, whether it's drainage improvements or cutting plans or whatever it is. It'll look at all the acreage that we own, look at our objectives as water quality, from water quality perspective, outline a series of actions that may be taken in the future over a period of time. These are like 10-year
10-year
plan. And then based on this plan, then cutting plans and other activities will come from this. But Mike Maury is a licensed forester, so yeah, you would be doing a lot of the things that Carl Davies used to do.
Mike,
Was Mr. Maury selected based on his quals or his price or both? How did his price relate to the others?
It was based on, all the prices were very close. So we picked more on qualifications and presentation of approach and scope. The other thing that Nicole had required as part of the RFP was submittals of actual work product, which to us is important. We were looking for work product both from sort of a paper report standpoint, but also getting information on GIS that we could use and incorporate into our GIS program. You can see from some of the mapping that Nicole's been working on with Andy Keither, it's very important for us to be able to track things within the GIS system. So we were looking for a project team that could give us data in a way that we could manage over the long term. We own a lot of property out there. If we do cuttings, if you do cutting 1 year, you may be back out there in 20 years or 25 years or 30 years, and you want to be able to keep track of the areas where work was done. And one of the best ways to do that is with the sophisticated mapping that we have. I think the Maury team submitted some good examples of mapping, and they had a very detailed scope in terms of the types of maps they felt were appropriate for the city, and they went beyond some of the scope and approach that the other foresters had submitted. So we felt like they were really the most responsive to our needs, and They were all within, I forget what the prices now were, I don't have them in front of me.
Range from 25 to 38, didn't they, Jim?
Yeah, Bay State came in the highest at 36, and then Panther Mall was 28,000.
And this one was at 35.8.
Have we worked with him before?
We have. Nicole did some research and contacted several references for the bidders. Actually, you can speak to that a little bit. We haven't done work with Mike, but he's done a lot of work with Wayne Five in
Yeah.
the Office of Planning and Development.
He's done, I'm sorry to interrupt,
No,
he's
okay.
done forest stewardship plans for the city before. I'm not sure specifically what piece, but Wayne said that, again, his attention to detail is great, and he knows his stuff when it comes to forestry, so.
Also, one member of the project team, Molly Hale, has done work for us in the reservoir in the past, doing wildlife inventories and timber inventories.
And she worked with Carl Davies for a period of time as well. So there's some institutional knowledge that she brings to the project as well.
Any other questions?
What is the time span for completion on this?
A year. We're hoping
1 year.
to start as soon as possible and get all 3 forest stewardship plans done by the end of April 2012.
Okay, now does this, while you're doing this, does it preclude us from doing any cuttings that we may have scheduled?
We don't have any cutting scheduled.
None scheduled.
No.
And what is our budget? Because we use the money from the timber harvest to buy land around the reservoirs, to protect our reservoirs. Do we have a budget, or have we used all that money?
We don't have any money in.
I believe we have about 15 to 20,000 remaining in the budget. The last chunk of money out of that went to the Skibisky acquisition.
Yeah. Okay. So we have no
This is
plans
budget
for the next
for-
year anyway.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do you recall how many acres you own altogether in the different watersheds? Or?
I have them per watershed. I think it's over 3,000 acres, but essentially for Ryan Forest, the northernmost piece, it's 962 acres of city-owned property we own. West Whately is the most. That's slightly over 1,500 acres, and then Mountain Street is 639.
Nicole, could you just quickly describe what the colors mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's fine.
Okay, so this.
You got dark green, light green.
Yeah, the dark green is the city property. The light green is property that's permanently protected. So this is Conway State Forest. This is also, we wanted to illustrate in the RFP that we also had some parcel prioritization that we knew, and that we actually had assessor information. So that's kind of the purpose of this map. But for tonight's meeting, really the lines that matter is the red line, which shows the watershed boundary associated with each drinking water reservoir, and then again the dark green, which shows the city-owned property. Then I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. So, ready to call the question? So it's a vote to award the contract to Mr. Maury for $35,000.
Second.
All in favor of awarding? Okay. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. That's right.
Your negotiators.
Now, next let's take number 1 in old business out of order. Draft of the, yeah,
Okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and that's in regards to the public access and the watershed policy. So just some background on these policies. In the fall of last year, 2010, DEP came out for their biannual, or every 2 year they come out and do a watershed inspection. In January, they issued a report, and part of that report required preparation of these, or drafting these, a public access policy and a snowmobile policy. So the public access policy, I don't believe, has actually been in front of the board. But the snowmobile policy has been. The public access policy, which was in your packets, really serves 2 purposes. The first page of that essentially says kind of what our trespassing policy is, which is we don't allow any public access on our property. And really the purpose of that is to give to our ranger so that when he does find people trespassing on our property, he can hand them something. So it also functions as an educational piece as well. And we're also talking about installing some kiosks within the watershed where our ranger has seen people. Just again, as a way to get the message out there that we don't allow folks to come check out the reservoirs or hike along the.
So they would have to trespass to get to the kiosk?
Well, it depends where we put them. We might talk to the.
The booby trap.
Then we'll have the ranger hiding in the woods. Well, it depends. If they're going to be placed where they're close to the roads, and we might actually coordinate with other municipalities and see if we can put them in the public rights of way. But so the second and third page of that policy, though, is it actually is for folks who do have authorization to be on the property, and that's really the two snowmobile clubs and the birders who come out Christmas time to do some birding. So this way, we'll have a policy to give to them that says, okay, you're allowed authorization, but you have to follow these rules. And so that's pretty much it. The one thing which ties to the snowmobile policy, can I talk about that now? Okay. So you've seen the snowmobile policy, and I know that the board members had some questions about liability associated with recreational use of riding snowmobiles in the watershed. And I talked to Elaine Reel, and she issued a memo, which again I believe you have in your packet. And essentially, as long as the city does not act in a willful or reckless manner, the city is not liable for any personal injury or property damage associated with any kind of recreational use on watershed or city property, for that matter. So what I've done is I've added to both the snowmobile policy and the draft public access policy language in there essentially stating that City of Northampton is not liable for any personal injury or property damage associated with authorized recreational use of city-owned property.
And just to clarify, when you mentioned the birding around Christmas time, that's not just general birding, it's the census that they take on one of those
Yes,
days.
yes, it is.
So it's a very specific
Yes.
intent.
Yes, it's, yeah.
So if another organization, worthwhile organization or well-organized organization, came and asked for an opportunity to use it also, the bird count makes sense. If something else comes along that makes sense, we're open to that.
Sure, and I think the public access policy includes contact information, or I might not have included. But I mean, I guess the answer to that is we'd have to figure out what that group is, what they do, what its potential impact could be, and then talk about it and see if it's okay to grant authorization.
So evaluated on a case-by-case situation.
So Nicole, what are you, at this point, it's just informational, or are we looking for approval this evening?
Yeah,
or-
we're looking, ideally it would be approval of these policies, approval of the policies, so one, we can send final drafts to DEP to kind of satisfy their request. And then the other reason would be to, this fall when we coordinate with the snowmobile clubs, to actually give them something in writing about our policy. And then also to assist our watershed ranger who's out there having to confront folks, like the teenagers he just kicked out of from sitting around the reservoir, Mountain Street Reservoir. He can give them a piece of paper, and it'll be another step of educating the public that they just can't hang out on these lands or this property.
Jim, you got something?
Yeah, I'd like to, don't we include the rangers as special police? We used to,
No,
you don't do
it's
that
just an
anymore.
employee, part-time employee.
So do people on the board feel like you have these policies that we're being asked to approve? Yeah, I looked at them, I can't say I don't have them with me right now.
So I've read them, and I'm comfortable with them.
Okay. So any discussion or questions before we? All right, so how about a motion to, so we need approval on both. So how about a motion to approve the public access and the snowmobile use policies?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or? So all in favor of approving both policies and with one vote?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great,
All right, thank you.
thanks a
Thank
lot.
you,
Nicole.
Nicole.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
You can stay for the rest of the meeting if you want.
Okay.
We got private ways, we got other things. It'll be fun.
Take care. Good night.
So in terms of out of order, maybe the discussion of campaigning and leafleting and then bottoms row?
Yeah.
And you also have tourism signs.
Where'd Alex go?
But there's no one here for that.
Well, while we take the next one out, then wait for Alex to come back.
Alex is just right outside the door. Should I get him?
Would you please? Thanks.
So I'm going to have number 12 on board.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
All right, Alex, what do you want to say?
I'm gonna remove myself from this discussion. Renee and
Sorry.
myself from this discussion.
Did you want to use it?
That's what we do.
You're on.
You're up.
Okay. Well, as you all know, the transfer station gets to be very valuable territory as you get closer to the election. And I'm interested in seeing a kind of an equitable system up there. There's at least 4 people running at large, including a distinguished member of the Board of Public Works. There's also 2 mayoral candidates so far, probably maybe more. So there's going to be some competition for that space. And I'd rather, instead of a scrum of sharp elbows, like to see in place a policy that is fair to everybody, so that everybody gets a chance. And I don't have a specific plan, but I'm hoping that you guys would come up with something that you can administer easily without a great deal of cost. It seems pretty obvious, you know, if you're there one Saturday and a whole bunch of people want to do it the next Saturday, then you sort of go to the bottom of the list.
Do you think you could, I mean, you've certainly got the political background and the experience. Do you think you could just put together something simple that you think might work from your perspective?
Well, I could, but again, it's sort of an administrative thing, what you're willing to administer. The simplest thing seems to me to, you know, if you're there, if you get a permit for one Saturday and you're up there and you do that, then you go to the, you know, the bottom of the list and you wait, and if there's nobody, again, if the next
Right.
Saturday comes along, nobody wants to use it, you're back in there. If in fact Girl Scouts want to sell cookies and somebody else wants to talk about why you shouldn't go to a bag system,
Right.
whatever.
So there's a system in place, and there's some problems with it, which is what Alex is sort of alluding to. I don't know if Ned maybe wants to give a description. There's a limited number of these spots.
Yes. There's 4 slots available. And right now we have a request from the Bill Dwight for Council at Large to take up every Saturday from September 10th through November 5th. So what we're looking at doing is I was just writing some thoughts down on paper after talking with Deb Weiser, who kind of collects this information for me to sign the paperwork on, and perhaps looking at a monthly program that the first Monday of the month we look at all the applications for that month and see who's been here the previous month and who hasn't, and come up with some kind of fair and equitable system. And if there's a whole bunch of newbies out there, we just do a lottery system. If we have more than 4 applicants for new slots,
So we can handle 4 people
that's what we
on
allow right
Saturday?
now. A maximum of 4 people.
So like 2 hours each, or are
It's
they?
just 4 hours, or 4 people during the course of the day. Usually, the times, like these times are 8:30 to 12:30. So obviously from 12:30 to 4 o'clock, there's another opening on Saturday that they haven't asked for.
Right now, we block off the whole day. When someone comes in, we don't divide it up because it's hard to keep track of everybody. Deb and I were talking about it, and one of the things we're concerned about is if all the slots are taken by the political campaigns, what if you have a little, the Girl Scouts want to do something and there's nothing left for them. So I don't know if we could do half days or reserve something for other community things besides that. I don't know what the right road to take is, but.
And when you split a day, then you end up having to police to make sure people are leaving when
Right.
somebody else comes in, and
So that's a
so little
concern.
other issues that come up.
And we have a waiting list now of people that are signing up for, they want to take 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever.
Jim, do you have 2 thoughts or 2 months?
I'll talk from experience. I mean, I have campaigned here, and I did for several years. But the one thing that I did not do is I did not get into the traffic at the site. I think, my own personal opinion, that if you keep the campaigners on this end of the parking lot where the parking spaces are in front of this building and the other side, people can stop and talk to them if they wish. If they don't wish to, they're not bothered by them. I used to own a pickup truck at that time. I backed my pickup in. I had a sign in the back. I'd sit on the tailgate or whatever, and I had my nomination papers or whatever I was handing out. And people would actually stop and solicit them. I never went into the public and disrupted the flow of traffic around the transfer station. That is one of the most, I've seen it done by 3 or 4 people while I was at this end. And it's the most disruptive thing you can have at the recycling center. So if you set up a set of rules to keep them on this end, then it's not going to disrupt the Saturday and traffic there. That's the way I feel. And again, it's up to the board.
During the condition of the permit, of the authorization, one of the conditions is that campaigning and/or leafleting may only take place out of the way of vehicle and pedestrian traffic. There will be no interference with recycling and waste disposal activities.
So it sounds like Jim's saying maybe it'd be even better to say where,
In front of the administration building.
yeah, or
That's completely your choice.
Use both sides.
Alex.
Whatever, we can live, obviously, with whatever rules you make, and I agree with Jim. I think that having been one of the people in the flow of people trying to get to trash, I'm not sure that you win friends very easily that way. So but the rules need to be clear, really clear, so that we all abide by them. That's, play by whatever rules you make, but just make them very clear.
I'm just trying to clarify, when we say that there's 4 spots, what you're just saying is you have allotted 4 opportunities, not 4 physical spots.
Yes.
So, does it seem reasonable to ask you, or you and Alex, or you and Alex and Jim, or some, to just come back with a recommendation for the next meeting? I mean,
Not a problem.
it sounds like it's worth looking at it. Those spots are gonna be fairly dear, September, October.
So nice to have rules in place before then.
Yeah. You're not running, right?
No, but I'm very interested in at least some of the people who are.
Sure, sure.
So I'll be up there.
We'll have something drafted for the next meeting.
Okay. So next meeting or 2, I mean, it sounds like if we get this in place sometime in May, that's plenty of,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
We're in May.
well, or June.
I would think that we would want to start, I don't know about the other campaigns, but I think that we'd want to start, there may be a primary in September. So, in fact, probably be up there in July, certainly,
Well,
certainly in
July
July, maybe in June.
Starting next
Ward
week.
3, there
Is
might
that-
be a
that's- yeah.
contest, and that's in August, so it'll be preliminary to that.
Okay. Gary?
Well, is this, so there's 4 slots for 4 individuals,
Right.
but the groups could become bigger than one person, right? I mean,
No.
Girl Scouts sell cookies and there's 6 or 7 kids and parents. The kids who collect for whatever they
Well,
collect
I
for.
mean, if they're kids, they're coming with a parent,
Yeah,
but we can't have, I mean, it's so crowded here and people are driving through.
right. But
We
I'm just
don't
thinking
want a lot
if
of
people that hold
people.
campaign signs, can't they, couldn't they stand outside the gate?
They could if they
Off
were
the
off
curb?
the road,
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, up on the
I
lawn.
don't see why not, as long as people aren't stopping when people are trying to come in and out, because there's enough as it is.
Yeah, there's two
Cars
activities, I
back
mean,
out.
it's visibility, which is one thing,
Right.
but up here, there's usually, you know, you want to hand people
Right, yes.
something, you'd like to engage them in conversation if they, so inclined, give them a button, whatever.
That's, the other concern was, we have, 16 weeks of someone campaigning for this one particular candidate, and someone else could come in and also, a different person say, I want 16 weeks campaigning for the same candidate, so you have all of them taken up by one candidate. So I don't know, who's gonna decide that.
Ned's policy will
Yes.
wisely split the baby.
Shall.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Private ways. Motion to take number 4 old business out of order.
So,
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
As you know, the last meeting I told you that the mayor's asked that I clear up the plowing on private ways issue before the next winter season begins, so I'm actively working on it with the city solicitor. I met with members of Edward Square twice at this point, and they've actually filed a petition to the city council to become a public way. So you'll see a request for recommendation from the city council for the board and the planning department make the recommendations on Edward Square. I met last week with some residents of Bottoms Road, and they're in attendance here today, about the same particular situation. For those who don't know where Bottoms Road is, it's off of Clement Street. It's a dirt road that goes to 3 houses, just past the Clement Street Bridge at the crest of the hill, right there. And,
And roads at the top of the hill.
yes.
Um,
So anyways, when I was meeting with the mayor today, we're looking at setting up another meeting next week or so that would involve Wayne Fighton. I've asked Terry to attend, myself, Elaine Reel, and the mayor for further discussions how we would make some of these private ways public ways or not, or vice versa. We have 41 private ways in the city that we need to resolve the issue on, probably about half of them. About half the public way or private ways we don't currently plow. This all came about from a letter from the Inspector General that basically says the city council has to give specific authorization of funds to plow private ways, and that hasn't been done. So we're just trying to clear up this issue that's been, the file goes back to the 90s on this that I have. So it's been kicking around for a very long time. But the request is that we get it resolved this year.
Just for a little more background information, Dave Reckhow, Gary, and I went around a couple of years ago, maybe even 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and we visited, I think it's like 60 or 70.
There's 41 listed.
Some are truly driveways. It happens that I owned a house over on Market Street and never knew that my driveway was a public way. I was completely unaware of it, and I owned the property at one point. So some of them you wouldn't look at twice, and others, it's hard to believe they're not city streets. So that,
They meet all the time.
yeah, it looks like any other street.
we've been working on it.
On at least one street, someone came out and accosted us, wanted to know what we were doing on their property. So people have strong feelings, that some people feel it's their private property, which in fact it is.
And there's some streets that will really surprise you that are private ways, such as Church Street, Depot Street down in downtown Florence. They're all private ways.
Depot Street's all private land. I mean, they put a street across the back of the bank's property. Awaga
Awaga is a
by
private way.
Smith looks like a,
You're kidding.
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Wilder Place next to Cooper's Corner. 10 or 12 houses on the street. Curbing, water, sewer, it's a private way.
So the issue that we were dealing with is most of our streets are surveyed. There's a surveyed layout, there are pins, pins are long gone probably, but at one point it was very neatly and correctly laid out. And the thought of going to 50 streets and having them properly surveyed and filing all of this and going through all the legal steps, it's daunting, it'd be really expensive. So Ned's idea is that we would see if there's a way to do a more general taking that would just say plus or minus 30 feet from the center line of the road as it appears to be now, and kind of try to come up with something that doesn't require such a rigorous taking.
There's some other criteria that we were looking at, if they had a water and sewer line under them, was one of the ones I know. I was on one of the earlier committees that looked at that we thought public sewer, public water should be a public street, and they end up being private ways. They were never accepted.
So Bottoms Road, you people here because you're interested in it, or is there some issue? Has something come to a head?
Actually, yes. For years now, and I actually presented the Ned Huntley the problem that was going out there years ago, and it happens every spring. Bottom Road washes out at the end and goes on to Clemens Street, down the hill onto the bridge, and the city has to come up and pick it up every year. Sometimes it washes totally out. It just corrodes the whole area down to the water pipes. There's 3 shut-offs at the end, which belongs to the city. It washes all that out. The drain on the left side going up was repaired by the city years ago. It was totally remodeled, and it goes under the street over to the river on the other side. So that was done. But the drainage on that side also clogs up from the drain all the way up the hill. And that's why the water runs over and down the street and washes the whole thing out. So my suggestion was to have the DPW or the city put in drainage from the top side all the way down to the drain, which would prevent it from washing out every year, and possibly grade the road on a crown, which would save from washing out as well.
So stormwater basins up
Right.
further up the hill.
Right.
And is your driveway onto the street? Or
My
is
driveway is onto Bottoms Road.
You're on the Bottoms.
Right.
And one of the houses, their driveway goes to Clement Street?
Right, the one that's on, that has a driveway from Clement Street up, that house is also,
Right.
has probably connected to Bottoms
Actually,
Road now.
there are two houses, I believe, that come right after the bridge as it's go up the hill.
Right.
Their drive is right up, sort of parallels Bottoms Roads, but that's their technical access. And then there are 3 houses that have shared common access through Bottoms Road.
It's a real challenge, because if we take the road, suddenly there's a project. In those driveways, if I'm correct, those houses wanted to connect to Bottoms Road, and the residents of the road felt that, hey, this is our road, you have no right to use our road.
Well, we're those residents.
I
and
know.
That's not
Yeah.
quite how it happened.
Well, there was an issue about it though, and
The issue was that Ray's property has a right of way to Bottoms Road, there's no question. And the property across from Ray, which was built as a mistake, in fact, because they had no frontage, has at this point common usage of Bottoms Road, there's still no question. When the large house on the hill was developed, it, he didn't want to, the developer didn't want to deal with the right-of-way or an association usage or anything. He just didn't want to do it. And that was the issue.
That's what led to
Yeah.
Yeah, he
It wasn't
essentially
like-
asserted that he had a right of way to use the road when he did, in fact didn't. And the city and the planning board and the zoning board said you don't have the right of way to use that road. And he went ahead and used it anyhow.
Yeah, so that's
Well,
what,
that's that public-private tension.
Exactly.
This
Yeah.
just turns to mush when you
And-
dig into it. Each road has its own.
Bottoms Road in particular has been a gray area, well, since, we've owned the property since '81, so that's over 30 years ago. And before that,
Leonard Day.
Leonard Day, was out there for 50 years insisting the city keep plowing the road, or if his barn burns down and they can't come here and put the fire out,
And
he's
there
gonna be
actually
after
was a
them.
fire up there,
You know?
years ago, where the property that I own, that house did burn. So,
Oh, right, yeah.
So the issue that brings you here tonight is the anticipated, well, actually, has it already occurred, the washout? I guess we're pretty
that
much
was
past
just right
it.
here.
Well, it's a sort of chronic, it's a chronic issue, and historically, the city has done, I think, a good job to the best of their ability, given the conditions of it being probably the only gravel road really that's in town and used and maintained, but that it's been pretty much a Band-Aid approach to it, so that if the road washes out here, they will backfill it and maybe ditch out that area, but the rest of it, the water then goes around it and goes down the road and washes out the next spring. So
Right.
it's been chronically, patched up here, patched up there, and the city has spent a lot of money on it, trying to do that. And, the thought was that there's this whole issue of, rights of way and that if there were a more comprehensive resolution of the whole thing, that it would be better long-term for the city, for the landowners, and all the abutters and the people who use it as right of way. That it would be a longer-term solution to
Right.
maybe figure out how to grade it, how to drain it, for everyone's benefit.
and as Ned described it, were the city to be able to take the road, it would loosen up chapter 90 funds, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That would probably never see pavement because the benefit ratio is extremely low with probably 20 trips a day on it.
I don't think
The only
anybody's
benefit to
really,
that is still, it's cheaper to actually grade it to level and crown it than paving it. That would go a long ways because that would last for who knows how long until you have to actually do that again.
Actually, for a period, the city did do a very good job of grading. I think they had, I understand the grader at one point was broken or something.
It's
And,
been broken a number of times.
yeah, or probably a number of times.
Every winter it breaks.
All right, so really nothing can be decided today.
No, absolutely not.
But it's, the mayor would like it, I mean, you'd like resolution on this. We touch it, seems like every year or so. The mayor is wanting us to get moving on it, so it sounds like maybe things will begin to happen.
I believe so.
I have no idea where we would get the money to absorb all of these roads, which are, in many cases, kind of oddball little roads that all have their quirky problems.
well, why would there be an expenditure? What would, I don't think we're asking the city to do anything other than essentially what it's been doing. It's just a matter of clarifying what's going on. How would it be an expenditure?
Well, you're talking about possibly storm drains.
Well, basically, over the years, there's basically been a trench or a ditch that's been dug out from the farmhouse all the way through Clement Street. That's just basically what was put in. There was no drains anywhere other than the new
Not
one that they
major,
replaced.
not major infrastructure,
Right.
mostly
Yeah.
just drainage ditch along to
Right.
channel water down to the river
Right.
without washing the
So it
road
doesn't
out.
go to Ray's house
Yeah.
or the bridge.
Yeah, I'm getting flooded out more and more each year.
Yeah.
And when the grading doesn't happen, what ends up happening is the plowing that gets done every year, the city plows it. Basically, the center of the road gets kicked over to both sides,
Sure.
which fills in the ditches, which then mean the water goes in the middle of the road and then center.
Watch that.
But to just a sort of a general maintenance thing of keeping the road crowned, keeping the ditch clear, would essentially be the same solution that's gone on for probably a century. I don't know if that's a major expenditure on the city's part above and beyond what they're already doing or not. I don't know. I mean, Ned, you probably have a better
I'm
handle
trying
on
to
that.
remember, I think it's been a couple of years since we've done really anything much with Bottoms Road. I know that Meadow Avenue, the resident who lives on Meadow Avenue approached me last year and discussed with the board about fixing his driveway because the water from the cemetery washed his driveway out. It came off the cemetery land. And I told him, absolutely not, we're not going to touch your driveway, but we still plow it. And it's a dirt road that goes to a single-family residence. So I've kind of put my foot down on Meadow Avenue at this point as far as maintenance, but I still continue to plow it, and that's all I do up there.
All right, so we have a meeting in the next couple of weeks with the mayor and the city attorney, and we're looking for a way, I think everyone's looking for a way to absorb as many of these roads as makes sense. You know, in many cases, there are 5, 10, 15 houses on some of these roads. It seems logical to absorb them into the city system. So that's all I've got for you tonight.
Okay, that's good. The information is very helpful.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time.
And Ned,
Yeah.
thank you for the time you provided.
Not a problem,
with us.
not a problem.
Appreciate it.
We'll be talking soon, I imagine.
Contract for the Con Street
Gary?
Reach.
Tourism signs beside you?
Tourism signs, exactly. I was just gonna say that. Okay.
We recently opened a winery on Sylvester Road, actually last October.
I'm Larry Goddard, this is my wife Sue.
And we have been in contact with,
Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, MDR, going through the process for agricultural sign, under the impression that Route 66 was a state road. I guess it is, but there's jurisdictions. We're approved by, sorry,
Excuse me, can I just ask one question? When you're meeting in 2 weeks with the mayor, is that a public meeting?
No.
No. Okay,
It's a strategy.
all right, thank you.
basically, MDR approved our sign. You know, we had a sign maker who was on the approved list of sign makers for the state. He submitted our draft of the sign to the state. They approved. We went back and then we had to go to Department DOT, state DOT. At that point, they were to approve it, and then we would pay for the sign and go through the whole process of them erecting the sign. And at that point, the state came back and said it was City of Northampton's jurisdiction. This is at the intersection of West Farms Road and Route 66, where we're looking to put our signs. This is a straight shot. You know, either hang a left or right, and go straight down. So it's sign says 2 miles to Mineral Hills Winery, Goddard's Red Hen Farm. And you know, we were put in contact with Ned by the DOT, who basically said you have to go through the city now to get the sign put up. And I understand that maybe there are different rules based on whether you're in the inner city or you know where you are, and you guys are looking to consider how to do that. For us, I guess the size of the sign. We're not really tied to meeting the logo, the grape logo or the apple logo, things like that. As the state,
Massachusetts homegrown thing.
as the state prescribes, we're just anxious to have something, you know, to let people know who we are and where we are.
Currently, there are 2 signs out there on Route 66 for Hickory Dell Farm and the Jimmy's Variety. Jimmy's Variety was supposed to be a temporary sign for the reconstruction of Route 66. But Hickory Dell has historically had a sign out there for the longest time. So I assume that you were looking at 2 locations, one at West Farms and 66 and Chesterfield Road, Sylvester Road intersections?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where we have yes.
Well, no, not the,
Not the official signs. Just that one is what the state calls a trailblazing sign. So we weren't looking for the state to do that, you know, there. It was only on Route 66. So
Okay.
we wouldn't do it. Someday in the
He was
future.
having one coming down from West Hampton and one coming up from Northampton, on either
Right.
corner,
Okay.
is what he was
Someday in the
talking
future, if this pans out, the investment pans out, and it seems to attract people, I may look to get one on Route 9, maybe even in Berkeley. That way, it's
Another
once again, it's a
straight
straight shot. People don't have to get confused.
Right
about
off
making
South
lefts or
Street,
rights. So that'd be a future I don't even know if the harbor master.
So what I explained to the Goddards is that you've been working on a tourism sign policy and it hasn't been completed yet. But the board has allowed for signage to be put up in lieu of that policy being done. So they're here to start looking at that particular request. Like I said, it's something we've done in the past for some individuals. We actually included in the package a running list of sign requests that we have. I believe it was in your package.
Yeah.
And,
It was here.
and these are the ones we've seen over the past couple of years. Some of them have been allowed to go in, some of them have not gone in. And so it's kind of hit or miss with the board at this point, but we'd really like to reconvene the subcommittee and try to hammer out a policy that we might go forth with. I told Susan Goddard that I believe I did about, originally we were looking at kind of like the Vermont signs, so it'd be the name of the business, 1 mile with the arrow, keep them very simple, very uniform. And I know Laura was working on a policy about the cost of the signs and was there an annual fee associated with it, initial fee to DPW to make the sign and put the sign up and then maintain it versus.
The one that we're talking about, the state told us it's a in our case, $500 per sign, so $1,000 for the signs, and then $200 to the state for them to put it in, is what they were gonna charge us.
So, we had talked about things like that as part of how Laura was looking at that, and of course, things got busy again and kind of fell by the back burner again. So, they made a specific request. I'd like to think that we could discuss it and look at honoring it, but it's completely up to the board. And then also, how do we actually finalize that policy that's been kind of hanging out there?
Sure.
You have the current design?
Yes.
I believe Ned has a copy of the current design.
I don't have it with me.
Okay.
It came in electronically from Mass DOT.
And is it something that is acceptable, that we would generate?
It could be something we could generate with our new machine. What I can do is send it to you as a email attachment, so you can all look at it also.
I would like to make a motion that we allow the sign per approval of what Ned has, after we get a look at it. I wouldn't want to hold up the progress for another 2 weeks until we come into a board meeting again. If it's okay with Ned, then.
I mean, we were looking at, what meets the MUTCD standards, which we tried to use as a guide, the manual and uniform traffic control devices. The other thing that's popping up on our radar screen right now is the retroreflectivity program that's coming down from the federal government, that new signs have to meet certain reflective standards. And those include, regulatory signs. I'm not sure if they actually apply to tourism signs or not, but they'll be applying to street signs in another, I think, 4 years. So, and how we get compliance with that standard. So I need to look at that also and see whether or not tourism signs or wayfinding signs would qualify for that also.
Didn't we just at last meeting approve a sign for Grove Farm, Northampton?
You did.
But I don't remember approving one for Zonta Club and the New Century Theater.
You didn't. I can speak to the New Century Theater request. I received an email from them a few weeks ago requesting a sign at the corner of Green and West Streets. And I told them that we were working on policy and the board was going to be working on that. And they didn't come in and they didn't make a specific request other than by an email saying that they'd like to have a sign at that intersection. It really hasn't gone any further than that. I told them that there was a policy we were working on and would let them know, but they didn't specifically come in. I don't know if they specifically came in, if that would put the board on the spot then to evaluate that, when they were sitting here or not. But I think some of these other requests that have been handled by Laura Hanson, she's been telling some folks the same thing, and then, they go away and then a few months, a month or a few weeks go by and then they'll call her again and then she's not really sure what to tell them. So I had asked her just to put this together just to get a sense, because I didn't know. She said, I'm getting a series of calls about these, and I had no sense of how many were coming in. I only knew about the New Century Theater one because they happened to call me about it. But,
I think the subcommittee could have a policy for the next meeting. I believe the subcommittee is available. And
Who's
Laura's
on the
around.
committee?
Pardon me?
Who's on the committee?
Me.
You're the whole committee?
I've always been the whole committee. No one else was interested.
But it seems to me that we were pretty lenient in allowing the Hickory Dell Farm and Jim's Variety right up in the area where these people are. It's not a congested downtown area.
But it's a perfect location for the policy.
Yeah.
So it'd be a stack of matching signs on the
Yeah.
wall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of, it keeps coming up as almost the intersection where people are looking for that.
Yeah.
There's a Maple House up there, there's Jim's,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
the
Well,
dump
well, I
in the
know
other direction.
the state requires you go to these certain sign makers because they have the colors the state wants. They want the big blue and white signs for agritourism. And they've got the reflectiveness on them and the whole bit, and it's separate. The sign they designed for us was a separate one with the Mass logo and then the grapes and the apples, and underneath was our winery name with a 2-mile arrow.
I understand though that the city then, since you have this
Might make
jurisdiction,
it
you'll
a
be
little bit
making the
smaller.
signs? Okay.
I have to admit, I've said before that I'll get on it, but we can do this. Laura's got a thing.
Yeah.
We just have to meet about the charges. But you know, last time we talked about it, which was ages ago.
I make a motion that we remand it to the tourism sign subcommittee for action
Struck
and
that.
implementation
Okay.
About the next meeting.
by the next meeting.
Terry, Susan DiMaria used to be on that subcommittee. I'm not sure if the board wants to appoint another person to the subcommittee, whether the subcommittee is.
Is anyone else interested in this issue?
I'll check on it.
Okay.
Because it seems to be you're getting into a couple of different complicated areas. One of the complicated areas, is the downtown area, which is really restricted. And we have to look at an awful lot of things down there before you post a sign. But when you're posting in rural areas, it's a different set of circumstances.
Yeah, because there's the sign ordinance for the
Yeah.
city.
Defining rural and then cities.
Yeah.
That's actually Bob Reckman.
You don't have to worry.
You probably know more about signs than I do.
Well, I did know that they said if you're more than 5 miles from where your sign's going in, you've got to ask the city to make the directional signs on the corners. Pathfinding signs, that's
Oh,
what I
yeah.
thought.
Trailblazing signs.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, we'll just do the straight shots. Sylvester and, West Farms and Turkey, Kennedy and South Street.
Terry, will there be a wine tasting at the next meeting?
I can pretty much guarantee that because the wine tasting subcommittee will.
Can I volunteer?
All right, so we'll have that on the agenda. Assume we come up with something the board likes. At least there'll be some clarification as to what the fees would be, size of the sign, what we're looking for, what we have been talking about is a way to stack up the winery sign, the Sugar House sign, the Jim's Variety sign, so that one pole, one standard, and a stack of signs.
Maybe have some room for extras later.
Yeah,
Or way to add them on.
unlike the sign that's on the corner by Woodward and Grinnell. It's like
Well,
that
that's,
big with,
yeah,
that's the state one, yeah.
That's the, oh, right.
Yeah, that's the state one.
Actually, I was thinking they're putting up a new sign themselves,
Oh, really?
Woodward
Oh,
Grinnell.
no, this is the one that, directing people to different
right.
places on the
Yeah,
corners.
it's sized for Route 91, I think.
Yeah.
When's the next meeting? When will?
We meet the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month at 5:30 here.
25th.
So the 25th will be the next meeting.
25th.
Yep, I'll be here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Oh,
Pleasure
and
meeting you.
we're bringing the wine, okay.
I don't think that's legal on public property.
No, it's not.
No.
Okay.
Nice meeting you both.
Thank you.
John Richards used to scare me every time he did that.
Meet someplace else.
Oh, but he'd say, somebody had come in with something and he'd say, of course, there are tickets for that available to us, or something like that. I used to freeze up.
Okay, now the contract for Town Street reconstruction, Gomes Construction, the amount of $784,000.
Move
This is our big annual contract. We've been working on this for a little over a year at this point. We estimated the project was going to cost $940,000. Low bid was $784,160 by Gomes. High bid was $1.056 million by Warner Brothers. We had a total of 8 bidders on the project, and $92,000 of this project is being covered by CDBG money, which covers some of the sidewalks and granite curbing that we'll be placing as part of this project. There's minor utility reconstruction, catch basins. Other than that, there's no other utilities being replaced as part of this project. So basically, it's new sidewalks, new curbing, new pavement, pavement marking, and signage.
When's it gonna start?
I would say that probably within the month. It will start after it's approved.
Jim?
Will one lane of traffic always be kept open there?
Yes.
Or there'll possibility of detouring some of them down Smith Street around?
We're trying not to detour anyone. We're trying to keep the street open one way at all times. I think what happens is as people realize the delays involved, they'll find other ways to get to their destinations besides Con Street.
Yeah, I would think so.
We told the businesses that we would keep one-way traffic available, or traffic available. You have a coffee company down there, a couple other businesses that were concerned that this 3 to 4 month long project would affect their businesses.
And is there a time frame in the contract
For,
construction finish?
I believe there is. I'd have to find
4
it.
months.
Usually,
Last week you said.
we were looking at late October, early November finishing it. Asphalt plants close typically mid-November.
But there's no penalty if they run over.
I'd have to look at the contract here. I don't know offhand.
Be liquidated damages probably in that column in there.
Gary,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
are we satisfied with the qualifications of the contract?
Yeah, we've done a number of projects with them. They've actually done work on the state hospital grounds that we're currently working on accepting as public ways. Gomes does do good quality work.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah.
All in favor of approving that contract?
Aye.
No one opposed? Contract for gaseous chlorine to JCI Jones Chemical in the amount of $31,500.
Move approval.
This is wastewater treatment plant. Last year was $720 a ton, this year it's $700 a ton, so it's gone down in price a little bit. This is our annual contract for disinfection at the wastewater treatment plant.
Ton cylinder.
One.
1 tons?
Yeah.
45 1-tons of wood.
Okay. Thank you.
How big is a 1-ton cylinder?
1 ton.
That's the weight.
2,000.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, it's about from here to the end of the table, and it's a couple feet. Bigger.
Bigger
Very,
than
very,
you?
Very, they stack 6 at a time on cradle down there.
The other bid we had on this was $839 a ton.
830.
Better price.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor of granting the contract?
Aye.
Contract for sodium hypochlorite to H. Crevitt and Company in the amount of $38,400.
Move approval.
Second.
This year it's $2.56 a gallon. Last year it was $2.19 a gallon, so it has gone up. It's a 15% solution. They use this in the headworks to cut some of the disinfection of the waste stream coming in. This is our yearly contract, estimated to be about $33,000 per year. That was our estimate, and bids came in at $38,400. We did have 2 bidders. The other bidder was $3.35 a gallon.
This is at the wastewater plant?
That's correct.
I didn't know there was that.
Questions? All in favor of granting this contract?
Aye.
Contract for sodium hydroxide to H. Crevitt, also for $41,250.
Move approval.
Second.
Last year's price was $2.35 a gallon. This year it's $2.75 a gallon. And this is used for odor control at the wastewater treatment plant. We did have 2 bidders. The other one was $3.52 per gallon. versus $275.
All in favor of approving this contract?
Aye.
Contract for resident engineering services for the Bradford Street Pump Station's construction to Robert Maelstrom,
Move approval.
$58,000.
This is a contract for resident inspection services at the Bradford Street Pump Station. We actually have a task and a contract right now with SCA Consultants to provide resident inspection services at the pump station. SCA had budgeted provide an estimated fee of $90,000 to provide resident engineering services. They were planning on sending an inspector from New Hampshire out to the pump station site, and it was a person with a lesser amount of experience than Bob. Bob Maelstrom is a local professional engineer who lives in Plainfield. He's got over 35 years' experience in civil engineering projects. His rate's a lot cheaper than SCA's. We don't have the travel time and associated travel costs associated with using him. Ned and I had a discussion with SCA about removing that $90,000 task from their contract and awarding a contract to Bob Maelstrom for $51,150. So that was sort of the thinking behind the switch. SCA was fine with it. At the next board meeting, we'll have an amendment to SCA's contract to remove that task from their contract. So we felt like better service at a much lower rate.
Merle?
Why would they go along with it? I mean, they're giving up the overhead for the 91 people. Could you guys have silver tongues or?
David?
I just wondered on the status of the project overall.
The project's moving. We haven't broken ground yet. There's a lot of paperwork and shop drawings. It's a package pump station, so a lot of the construction work is actually being done off-site at the manufacturer's location. So I feel like the project's moving along according to schedule pretty well. But there's really nothing to see at the site to indicate that that's the case.
And MJ, you have a?
No, I
No, Jim?
How much site time is he putting in actually?
We haven't had any inspection time yet on the job.
Oh, but when they break ground.
When they break ground, it'll probably, well, the nice thing about Bob is that if we need him out there for a full day, he'll be out there for a full day. If he only needs to be out there for part of a day, we're only out, he'll come out for part of the day and do what he needs to do. We're anticipating that the needs for inspection through May and June are probably going to involve trips to the precaster to document work that's been done so we can approve pay requisitions. So we think that's mainly what's going to happen in the next few weeks. The contractor schedule shows him breaking ground in the beginning of July. And I think the work will ramp up from there and probably will be full-time for, I would say maybe 3 months.
Okay. I certainly know Bob, and I have a lot of confidence in him. Good engineer.
Mike?
My questions sort of focus on responsibility for the different roles between SCA and Maelstrom. And then we looked to SCA and their insurance to provide us with a backstop on any errors and omissions that they make in their work during construction. And so I wondered what kind of an arrangement we have now between Maelstrom and SCA to make sure that we don't if there's a problem, we don't end up with those two parties just pointing at each other and saying it was the other guy's responsibility.
Well, I think all I can say in that regard is that we had the scope specifically from the SCA contract, and we mirrored that scope in Bob's contract to make sure that, at least in terms of the responsibilities that their inspector was supposed to provide, everything that they were providing is to be provided by Bob.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of liability, the city's contract requires Bob to have insurance for the work that he's providing, but that's not to say, I don't know if there's a potential problem by having that the case. I'm not sure. We felt like we were going to be getting better inspection coverage because of Bob's experience on the project. They were going to send a more junior person out at a higher billing rate, so from that standpoint, we felt like we were getting our dollars worth.
I think there's some real advantages to this. So I'm intrigued by the concept. It's just, if something goes wrong, it's gonna be harder to sort out whether it was a field decision by Maelstrom or an office decision by SEA that led to that.
Right. So we'll obviously be involved in, site inspection and things in terms of meetings and questions that come up. SEA does have money in their contract to send somebody from their office out. In fact, we had a discussion about the foundational requirements for a pump station. There's a lot of clay out there. A couple of things that were done different in terms of a floating pad and some other connections that were done. SEA had requested, that there's, to make sure that there was enough money for them available to send a geotech guy out and a structural guy out during a couple of those key points during construction to make sure that they were satisfied in terms of certifying what was done. So they identified a couple of points that they felt were important. Because a lot of the construction's being done at the manufacturers, I think it lowers that risk.
I think we have to be very careful in that site too, because we're ramping up the idea of having rail traffic constantly through there, passenger rail traffic. And that's going to be kind of a new addition in that area, and you're right there, the right side of the tracks. So certainly the bed, the base, everything else is so important in that area.
David? How about the pre-treatment plant, is that moving ahead?
At Coke?
At Coke.
Their pre-treatment facility, I believe, is up and running at the moment.
Just for information, the board had done this before with a gentleman named Otto Held. We hired him for the water treatment plant inspection services rather than AECom. At that point, the permit got appealed. Otto couldn't wait for a year of appeals, so he went back to his normal course of business, doing construction inspection services for a local engineering firm. So it's not the first time that we've looked at doing this to save money.
Will the amount of the change be 91,000 that you're gonna be proposing at the next meeting?
To the SEA contract?
To the SEA contract?
We'll be deleting that.
For that whole amount? Okay. Yeah, I asked the question sort of rhetorically, but I am curious why they would go along with it.
I think because, well, in my opinion, Ned may have other thoughts about it, but we're providing a lot of contract work to SEA. The comprehensive wastewater management plan, the BLARAC project, this project, they're doing a lot of work for us. So we feel like we've got a good working relationship with them, and if we ask them to do something, then they're trying to work with us and do the things that we need them to do. And they seem fine with this type of arrangement. We don't really have a problem with it.
Great.
But I just want to reiterate my point that it can lead to muddy waters if there's issues, and it's,
It can, I think we're gonna save some money, but the staff's gonna have to work harder. So I think there's something we won't
realize the full benefit.
Right, we won't realize the full benefit. It looks to me like, this is almost a 50% savings in this particular task. So I think as long as we recognize that there's a slight risk here, I'd be willing to do it. I just want to make sure we recognize it.
And if there's
Especially
no-
where we know both parties.
That helps a lot, yes. Sure.
I really think there's a great benefit to it, because many times on different projects, different than public works projects, the city has hired clerk of the works that is not related to the general contractor. The clerk of the works is looking after what the city wants, and the general contractor is looking after the contractor.
I think the other issue is that the quality of the inspector, whether he's employed by the consultant engineer or not, I think it's the quality of the person that's doing the inspection and not who's being paid by ends up being very important. If you look at the water plant, we had a number of issues that came up on the water plant construction, even though AECom was doing the inspection on that. And if we had a better inspection or additional inspection on a particular project, some of the problems that we had would have been seen and we wouldn't be still facing them. So there's a lot of risk in a lot of different areas, but having someone with a lot of experience and being able to look at things and recognize problems, I think is certainly an asset, even though that person is employed by the designer.
Is he a sole shop?
It's not unlike Bill Latender doing the high school or the fire
That's right.
station. But I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, I was curious if he was a sole shop.
Yes.
Okay.
So is everyone comfortable calling the vote? So all in favor of approving the contract for Bob Nelson?
Aye.
1-year extension of the water quality testing total coliform contract, 05-11, to Howard Laboratories.
Move approval.
That's number 7.
Oops.
What did we do?
We missed the gas number 7.
Why'd they have that covered? I'm sorry. 1-year extension for the landfill gas monitoring and facility inspections contract to Stantec. No amount.
No amount.
Just
Approval.
Free?
No, it's $17,048 for providing all services, for providing all supplies for attached specifications, amount not to exceed $17,048.
Stantec provides monthly landfill inspections and monthly operational checks on the landfill gas system out at the site, regulatory requirement. It's an extension to their contract that we did last year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What's their contract amount for last year?
Same, fixed amount.
So, all in favor of approving that contract?
Aye.
Now we can talk about water quality testing in coliform. And that's already been moved and seconded.
So this is an annual cost of $4,992 a year for water testing and analysis. And like I said, it's a 1-year extension of the existing contract.
No change in price?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
1-year extension of the water sampling and analysis contract to Spectrum Analytics.
This is for testing,
Water quality.
excuse me, I made a mistake, they were filed wrong. The one you just voted on was actually $7,830 a year with Howard Laboratories. It's $14.50 per test, and there's an amount not to exceed $7,830. I apologize for that.
How many tests are there?
Oh,
A lot.
amazing.
Oh, they have to be like 50 a day.
A number of sampling points in the city, and I think are they done weekly or every 2 weeks?
I'm not sure.
I could pull the contract if you want.
But you're saying it's $14, $15?
$50 a test.
So I'm a little confused on what we're voting on.
There's an existing contract that had, basically there's a 1-year contract with a 1-year extension. You're voting on extending the contract for an additional year for that dollar value.
For the water quality testing.
That's correct, for $7,830.
We already voted.
Howard Lab.
We already voted.
So we're not voting on that.
No, we already voted, but we were based on the wrong numbers.
Right, I'm correcting,
He's correcting the numbers.
It's 522 tests.
wow.
About.
That's what he's got his gun for.
How long do you have to start before it's done? So the contract that you're looking at right now is $4,992. And that was a not to exceed contract, and this also is a 1-year extension.
So all in favor of approving the extension?
Aye.
Oh, the next one is good. Discussion of below grade responsibilities in buildings. Something that the claims committee goes into over and over and over is a sewer backup. or sometimes a stormwater backup. We had a stormwater backup recently, which gets into the basement through open plumbing fittings well below the ground level. And I think the claims committee feels like, geez, you know, we should tighten up our policy, or we should make sure we have a policy about these things. For example, one of the banks in town had sewer water in their basement just recently. Now that building is new enough that their building permit probably expressly said that they were not allowed to have open fittings below grade.
That we would not be responsible, that's correct.
Yes.
So they should have had a new sewer entry permit associated with that building.
That's a fairly new building. But if you go back more than 25 or 30 years, is that about the right amount of time?
That's correct.
It becomes questionable whether people signed an agreement that they understood they couldn't have open fittings in the basement. So our thought is that maybe we ought to, first of all, have a policy that just make some determination about, do we say ground level or below the pipe or below the street, and some way of defining what's below grade. And then secondly, we need to promulgate that either with their water bill or some way, make sure everyone's been notified a couple of times.
The word was it wasn't illegal to have basement fixtures. The wording in the permit is that we would not be responsible for damages caused by below grade fixtures, below street grade fixtures.
Then the other issue the claims committee bumps into, just as an aside, for example, the stormwater drain backed up on the street recently, and the people had a big hole in the basement in case they ever wanted to put in a sump pump, and the water welled up through the hole in the basement. And you know, you find yourself with these like, well, not really our problem, you know, but we didn't say that they can't have a big hole in the basement. You just need a policy to tighten it up a little bit. The other issue is, okay, sometimes we feel like, all right, this really was our fault, but what if they had priceless artwork on the floor in the basement?
There it is.
Could be, but again, we might need to tighten that up. So that there are times when the water comes out of the pipe and squirts up to the ceiling.
Pump gallery.
So there are times when it's clearly our fault. So is that something the staff would make a recommendation on? Okay. So it seems to me the two issues are define below grade open fitting and add some wording about our liability for
Or lack there.
items stored. Even if it's determined that it is our problem, or we should pay for the remedy of the water coming in.
I wonder what the precedents are in other communities or legislate or laws in the state cover this situation.
We used to be much stricter about this. So for example, if something happened out at the sewer and water backed into your basement, and there's no way the city could have known about the obstruction until someone called it in, that in and of itself was sufficient for us to say, sorry, nothing we can do. We've become a little more customer friendly over the past 10 years.
And it has costs associated with it.
Yes.
Oh, I think the customer friendly thing is, the policy that we did put in place, or I think we did, that the first time, there was no way we could have known about it. If it's a plug a second or a third or a fourth time in the same area that we didn't take care of, then it's our fault, we should pay for it. Stormwaters are a different thing. Stormwater, I don't think the city should be responsible for at all. If they're gonna put a stormwater connection in and tap to the stormwater drain, they should have a backflow preventer on it. And that would stop any real pressure from coming back up the line and flooding out of place.
Right.
These people that had a hole in the cellar, you know, we're sorry it flooded, but
I think the engineering piece on that is, I think they tied footing drains into it, and so the water backed up in the footing drains and sort of saturated everything, and then it came out through the basement floor. And what I tried to say to him is that a storm sewer system is to collect surface water.
That's right.
That's what it's for. And nobody had footing drains, well, I should say, but people didn't typically use footing drains in the past. Way back. I mean, this was a 100-year-old house or something, is that right? No, it's a new house.
Yeah,
Brand new.
The neighborhood was 100 years old.
Yeah.
So, Ned,
I've worked with Doug McDonald on this, and we have a request in front of us now. We're running the language past the city solicitor about city absolving any liability to the city for these stormwater connections going forward.
okay.
So that it's on every permit. We are not responsible for absolutely anything that happens for you tying into this. And the other conversation I had with Doug was looking at increasing the fees and bringing that to the board for approval. As you spoke about, is that here's a utility that someone's utilizing on a regular basis, yet there's no fee, there's no quarterly fee, there's nothing attached to it. So maybe it's an elevated entry fee because they use that service almost continuously, and there's no charge for that service being provided.
Mike?
My only comment, and I'm glad we're headed in this direction, is a stormwater system is never designed to handle the maximum storm event possible.
Right.
You pick a practical storm frequency and you design to that number, and then you can be assured that there'll be storms that exceed that. And so we can't be responsible.
It's an act of God.
Nature.
Take a look at what's happening in the Mississippi River now. People that built all along the river, you know, they're flooding out.
Well, it's designed to the 10-year flood or the 100-year flood or whatever. Well, it's
Guess
going to
what?
be 10 years from now or 100 years from now. So you're right. You can't design a system that would collect everything you could possibly have.
We had a claim from a rain event last year off of Franklin Street where we saw literally 2 inches of rain in 20 minutes. And the woman ended up with about 4 feet of water in her basement. So a lot of damage. Just overwhelmed our stormwater system. That's never had a problem before. And we're seeing these changes in the weather patterns where you're seeing these really intense rainstorms that you didn't see 10 years ago.
The design for the levees, and at least the central Mississippi area, was supposedly 6 times normal rainfall over a 2-week period, and what they've experienced is 8 times normal. So it's a gigantic.
The engineers had the wrong multiplier. It's a math.
And they thought it was probably 3, and they doubled it.
That's right.
Well, it's what's saying, look at the homes that they built around Tornado Alley. They thought they had to build some specifications that they wouldn't have any problem.
And the tsunami won't allow them to be in.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're comfortable,
I'll craft some things for you to look at for the next meeting.
okay. And is that timeline okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We're gonna be out straight with the signs. I just
And
need the
private
full
ways.
staff support. Okay, great, thank you. Set date for claims committee for 69 Main Street, Florence.
Yeah, the bank thing.
I was curious why they declined it.
He called me this morning and said he had something come up that he couldn't make it, so he asked if it could be.
Are we in a house here in foreclosure?
Yes.
Are we gonna have a copy of the sewer entry permit for that building? I'd love to see that.
We will hunt it down.
It's on the permit.
So do you agree to a time?
Nope, not yet, I was just wondering, I didn't want to make another meeting.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That language is on the permit.
But in general, are we okay getting here a few minutes early for the next meeting?
You want 5 or 5:15?
5:15?
Sure.
5:15. Great. Well, we can do the Gary, is there anything you'd like to talk about that we didn't touch on?
contractor finished painting Elm Street today? Looks pretty good.
It definitely slows me down. Not that I go speeding, but I don't speed, but when you're pushed right next to that yellow solid line by that, if you're following your fog line, you're pretty close to that car coming at you.
Well, I rode up here on the bike and it just, I don't know what it is, but it feels like cars are slowing down. They're just not going by as fast. They've moved to the center line. There was quite a bit of traffic.
You were going faster.
I was going faster. I was going 22 miles an hour and they were barely going by me.
Looks good.
It does. And did the lumpy bumpy one get adjusted a little bit?
No, not really. Well, there is another project coming up, but I'm not really exactly, but I know they're looking at that intersection, that area. It is the main gate to the college, and the college wants to make an improvement there, so I don't know exactly what it would entail. But it will be a major project.
Jim, how about you? Anything that, anything that you'd like to mention? Or Mike?
Also,
Two items. Last night I presented the DPW budget to the city council. Went over, I thought, very well. Not a lot of pressing questions about it. Just so the board knows, the DPW complex is in the capital improvements budget for this year as part of the city budget. Phase 1, $16.6 million. So I imagine that it's going to be quite a discussion at city council meetings coming up. As
But
they
the
do their two
subcommittee
votes.
has approved it and moving forward.
It's all moved forward, and it's a matter of waiting for council votes to see how we proceed.
What's the anticipation on the council attitude?
I couldn't tell you. They voted, I'm trying to remember, they had a majority vote to do the design work. It was unanimous, they all felt that we needed a new complex up here. The gray area question was the funding of it, and was this proper timing with the economy.
There are 3 city councilors here Monday for a joint committee that we have. And they're getting a lot of questions from people. So although the 3 guys seem to get it and understand why we need it and didn't debate any of that, there's still, I don't know if I could predict how they'd all vote.
Does the public realize that there's essentially no change in taxation? Because
This
we're just-
pushback about the water rates. You know, we've raised the water rates all over the map, but 8, 9, 10% for years, and we never hear a peep. But this year, because it's happening at the same time and is partly in response to the building, there's a whole lot of pushback about the water rate and the sewer rate.
Right. So I've been asked to attend the next city council meeting next Thursday night. I've asked Terry to come with me. They want to have a discussion of the rates, sewer and water rates. What people are realizing that there are a bevy of projects that we're doing, and the fact that we're trying to put money in advance for the comprehensive plans, asset management plans that we're doing, and building that bank account rather than bonding everything and carrying $1 million a year in interest payments. And we're trying to be a little more proactive, and I think that's what the councilors want to get out to the public, that they actually hear this.
After we talked about the city councilors were all on board, the discussion switched over to how can we get the word out so everyone understands it as clearly as they did after we talked about it.
It's not just about the DPW complex, it's a number of infrastructure components that we're trying to address and take care of. Oh, one last thing.
Yes.
Right behind Mr. Culhane, our new poster for the year. Next week is National Public Works Week. We had a proclamation read last week at City Council with a number of DPW employees present, and we were cheered by the audience.
I'm cheered by that.
So anyways, it is, just so you know, it is National Public Works Week all next week, and there's our annual poster board for it.
They had the best posters.
Last year's poster was fabulous.
Yeah.
And you're all set. And PJ?
Awesome.
All set. And Jim?
Crosswalk painting?
Near the high school, when is that scheduled?
What's that?
Crosswalk paintings?
We have ordered paint for crosswalks. It's a matter of getting some warm days down. Center line painting, we're gonna have to wait a little bit, and fog line painting because we're having our pumps rebuilt on the paint machine as we speak. So we're trying to, we historically have done some crosswalk painting in high priority areas, but with our budget, we're pretty tight, and we usually start our major painting after July 1. I'm trying to see if we can get a jump start on it this year.
It's really bad near the high
It is.
school. It's really bad near the high school.
Especially when we have students that walk out and don't look.
Well, the downtown,
The teachers who walk out in, that do what I call the crosswalk dance, because they're crossing and nobody's stopping for them, and they're dancing and pointing at the pavement,
Yeah.
that you can't really tell that there's a crosswalk there, Mr. Brennan. So you know, we have these beautiful bike lanes that are on Elm Street now, you know, nicely painted.
They weren't so beautiful last week.
Well, but they're there and they're obvious, and, you know, they're really, said making an
So the
impact.
college could chip in up by the high school.
I'm just saying that this is a particular time that you want
Extend the
to
boundary.
try to use all those incidental prompts to help young drivers be the best drivers that they can be.
So, let's think about it.
we'll try everything we can. Like I said, we focus on downtown schools and high pedestrian areas first. So hopefully that will start soon.
Make a motion in here.
Wait,
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought he was done.
Second.
All right, Dave, what are you gonna do about
I'm sorry, please.
Oh, I am.
Just a couple quick things. There's been, we got a few letters about, I think last week you approved a charge for people dropping off the food compost. There's been a couple letters and some phone calls asking if that could maybe be an annual fee so that it doesn't seem like $5, $5, $5, or whatever
20
the,
punch card. You get 20 punches.
for $5?
It's 25 cents a piece.
No, but I wasn't
It's a
here.
deal.
The letter maybe misunderstood then?
No.
Well, no,
No.
she's
She
trying
was
to
talking
say,
about using it, she was gonna use it, she figured she'd need to re-up more than once a year. And she was saying, why not raise $10 and make it once a year? Now, no,
Oh, so she was here.
no,
No.
she just
No,
sent
it was
the
an
letter.
email that was forwarded to us, at least I got it. I think it was
Yeah.
forwarded to
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Jim?
Today.
So the original concept that we had was to just charge a flat fee. That was actually what I had preferred personally at the beginning. And then Karen thought this punch card concept would continue to work if we did it as was explained in the previous board meeting. But one of the emails, someone had described, you know, if you think about it, the bucket's not that big. If this is your sole means of getting your organics material out of your house, you may be out there 2 or 3 times a week discharging that. So if you look at it, it could be quite expensive, and that's I think where one person expressed concern about the cost, because you're gonna go through those punches pretty quickly, so it'd be quite expensive. And we don't really need, if that's true for a lot of folks, we don't need to raise that kind of money in order for the thing to work. I mean, if it was a $10 or $15 flat annual fee, and we provided people with a little membership card or something else that they could just flash,
Sticker on the bucket.
something, you know, that would be equally, I think that'd be fine. So I'll be talking to Karen about trying to come up with some other means of doing that. It seems like a pretty good, you know, the comment was well taken. I think that, you know, if this is your sole means, you're gonna go through those punches pretty quickly because you'll be up there pretty frequently.
And don't penalize somebody because they're doing it so often. And I
Right.
thought that's a good
That
thing
was,
too.
Yeah.
that was just the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were good comments.
Admittedly, I was in Puerto Rico when you guys wrestled with the issue, but I hate those little punch cards.
Well, I mean, people.
That's why I think it's April.
People
so.
forget it.
Um,
Lose them in your car.
Also, I ran into Lou, the attorney.
Wasn't
in
very
Puerto Rico?
nice.
No,
Your
Happy
car?
Coffee. And I guess things are slowly moving along with Amoresco.
Yeah,
The language has been approved to your satisfaction as far as giving us access to the raw data.
Well, not quite. I think when the language has all been agreed to, there'll be a contract amendment in front of the board for approval, but it's very close.
Okay. He seemed to feel like slowly but surely.
That's good. That's all.
That's all I got.
have one more thing. Was Smith, did Smith students come here regarding Ward 3 stuff? They talked to you guys at all about a Ward 3 project that they had worked on?
At the graveyard?
It did involve the cemetery?
I've had a couple emails from a woman about doing work in Bridge Street Cemetery.
Okay, well, this was a conceptual ethics. I think some kind of an engineering, landscape studies, architecture studies, something like that.
I could talk to Richie Parcelletti, he might have dealt with her without me being involved.
I'm just curious. The thing is, I tripped over this thing today. I was in the campus center for a reason. There's an arts lounge on the first floor of the campus center, and it's this display up there, and it's got some great maps and concepts for building a sustainable community. And there were 6 or 7 different sites, and one of them was the cemetery. One was they just took a neighborhood block, I think randomly, and basically redesigned everyone's backyard to make a community garden. It's really kind of fascinating. It's just something that.
I have some emails from her.
Okay, it's there for a couple of weeks, and it's a one room. It's a room about this size. You walk in, and there's all these different boards you can walk around. It's pretty neat.
Oh, where is that? Can somebody send me an
In
email
the
on that?
At the campus center,
Oh, the campus center.
it's called the Arts Lounge. If you come in from Elm Street, it's the first room on the right. It's a glass room.
Yep.
And you'll see the boys.
Do a wine tasting.
You what's that?
Do our wine tasting there.
You're good.
Well, that's good, because she never got back to me.
I just happened upon it, and
Yeah.
I was really impressed with what they did, and some of
Okay.
the mapping they had, some, started with, like photographic overlay, and then some sketches they did over that. It was pretty interesting.
So let's see, Jim, you moved that we adjourn, and I
Oh,
believe
yes,
Mike, you
and I have a
seconded
second.
that.
Quite a while ago.
All in favor?
Oh, we weren't really.